Are you tired of fighting the same old dragons over and over again? Wouldn't you rather fight a new family of dragons? Or better yet, wouldn't you rather play as a new dragon species in your 5e or Pathfinder game? Well, now you can. Roll for Combat, the creators of the incredibly popular Battlezoo Ancestries dragons, have done it again with Battlezoo Secret Dragons. This collection of 4 dragon books introduces new families of dragons to the world of 5e and Pathfinder. Now you can play as, or fight, the dragon you never knew you needed. Inside each book, players will find complete rules for playing as one of these new unique dragons, allowing them to unleash new abilities and powers never seen before. Meanwhile, GMs will find pages of monster stats, allowing you to pit these new creatures against your players. Each book features one new family of dragons filled with extensive, in-depth descriptions of their powers and abilities, background and history information, world lore, illustrations, and more to help you introduce these new dragons into your 5e or Pathfinder games. Experience the world of Battlezoo Secret Dragons through 4 new books. Fairy dragons are connected with the Fey realm and love to play pranks and cause mischief. That is, when they aren't conspiring with the courts of the Fae. Misfit dragons are hot, magical messes of magical energy, constantly shifting their physical forms, phasing in and out of existence, or simply releasing random wild magic effects. They're quite a handful. Leshy dragons are deeply connected to nature, allowing them to grow alongside different types of plants, fungi, and leshies. Oh yeah, and they're master chefs as well. And finally, the powerful battle dragons are obsessed with the thrill of combat. Battle dragons love hunting foes, dueling opponents, or commanding their legions to glorious victory. Head over to kickstarter.rollforcombat.com now to secure your copies of Battlezoo Secret Dragons and become the dragon you were always meant to be.
Hello! Welcome to Roll for Combat Live. We've got a lot of weird side topics here today, in addition to the fact that Hasbro investor call happened literally today. Steven watched it and is going to tell us all about how the future is digital and the main topic today. Also, you're apparently muted. Okay, I'll keep talking. I'm because I can hear Steven. So I don't know where he's getting muted, and hopefully that doesn't mean that I'm getting muted too, which is a possibility.
Hello, can you hear me now?
So we're going to hear about the investor call, but we've also got some mini topics, some of which are like a pretty big deal. For example, the Embracer Group, which is a huge group that had agglomerated Asmodee, a French company that picked up like huge percentages of all board games that are out there, has jettisoned and like disconnected from Asmodee. So we can talk about that, or Asmodee. We can talk about that as a mini topic because that could have repercussions for how we understand the possibility of like WoTC splitting off from Hasbro. What that would look like might be similar if it ever happened sometime in the future. It wasn't all positive for them. So we can get into that. And there's a lot of other things going on. Steven, did you fix your sound?
Yeah, I fixed it.
Oh, perfect.
I fixed it.
I was just talking until you fixed it.
No, I'm here. But yeah, boy, it went from very quiet to very busy in 1 week. Because there's so many things that happened in this last week. It's really kind of amazing. There was a lot of big news, a lot, and I don't even know. Should we go right into it or let people matriculate in? What do you want to talk about, people on the stream? Why don't you talk about dragons? Because there's only 1 week left on Secret Dragons. And I
can quickly talk about that. Yeah. Normally, I like going right into the main topic, but this Asmodee Embracer thing is so interesting that we may want to cover it first. But for Secret Dragons, that's our Kickstarter. It is live now. You probably saw the ad at the beginning. There's only a week left. We have 180,000. We've got almost 30 stretch goals at this point. It's getting close to it. And there's all sorts of new dragons. There's going to be classic Great Worms in there. extra information about great worms that allow you to present them directly into your games, playable options for the dragons, creature stat blocks for the dragons, lore for the dragons. And yeah, it's all looking really cool. So please check it out at kickstarter.rollforcombat.com.
And also the coolest freaking special covers ever. Here's the one. I'm actually working on this now. This is the cover for the classic creatures. We kind of are doing this. We're probably going to do this layout for all of our special covers going forward. Just the picture will be different and the background will be slightly different for each one, but it has a combination of gold and it has UV. You can see the UV there, and then regular printing. I don't know. I'm kind of torn because we also have done the alternate cover colors. Where's the alternate? So like for World Guide, this is the alternate. This is our special edition for World, and this is what I was doing before, where only the logo was color, and then there's gold on the back. But for this, we're gonna do gold and UV on the back. There's no back inside yet. It's just a cover, but it's gonna be the whole thing. So I don't know. I kind of like both, but I saw this one. I was like, oh, I like that. And then I saw this and I was like, oh my God, that looks so cool. So I was like, man, I might be doing those from now on. But you can only get it during the Kickstarter. So now or never. Just go to kickstarter.rollforcombat.com. So you better hurry. Now.
Oh, I'm looking in chat. One of the viewers right now, Sonia Gallardo Marquez, is an Asmodee worker and said that that Embracer thing was very sudden for them too. It just suddenly popped out of nowhere. And it could be an example of something that, because when all this stuff happened earlier on, and Alta Fox was like, let's split off WoTC from Hasbro. WoTC is being successful. WoTC is growing, and it would be stronger for investors to split it off. I remember at the time, a lot of people were saying that could be a very good thing because WoTC would not have to be like sort of susceptible to the puppet strings from Hasbro demanding particular things or trying to prop up other Hasbro properties that weren't doing well.
It has to do with money. It was all money. And we're going to see.
Now that this happened and what happened with Asmodee, it shows that there's some warning signs of things that could happen to WoTC if that got split up as well.
Yeah. Well, so I don't know. We can probably get into it. Once again, do like, subscribe. If you have questions, put them in. If you super chat, we'll answer their questions. Because there's I see a lot of questions, but just super chat and we'll definitely answer it. Otherwise, we might get to it, we might not. But the big thing is, so there's a lot of news. Mark really wants to get into this Embracer Group thing. Very long story short. So the Embracer Group was a group that, I'll give you the very quick overview, is they were buying up every IP you can find and lots of companies. They bought up Middle-earth Enterprises. They got the IP for basically Middle-earth. They bought up Asmodee. They bought up a ton of video game studios. And their goal is that they were going to sort of build this conglomerate, and then they were going to get $2 billion of investment funds from Saudi Arabia. And they didn't get the funds. That's basically it. It's like they put together this really good package and then tried to sell this package to Saudi Arabia for $2 billion. And it didn't work out. So now they're scrambling. First, they fired a ton of people. And now they're breaking up the studios and selling them back. So in fact, Take-Two just bought out, Take-Two bought out, people probably know before I do. Take-Two bought, who is it? The guys who do, I can't remember.
Is it Borderlands?
Yeah, the guys who do Borderlands. I forgot the name of the company.
Gearbox?
As soon as you said it, I knew. So Gearbox, here's the weird thing. Gearbox was originally owned by Take-Two, and then they became their own company, and then they were bought by Embracer, and now they're back. So they just went around in a circle. And yeah, so they got rebought. And that's what's happening. Is that this actually has been happening quite a bit. And I won't get into it. This is a whole other discussion. But there's a lot of investment. Saudi Arabia basically has so much money that they're just investing it everywhere they can find. Right now, they buy a huge amount of property, like something like 20%, 30% of apartments in Manhattan are just empty because they're literally bought by investors that just buy them just to have them and then hope to sell them in 10 years, and like no one lives in them. And they do this in London, they do this in Tokyo, they do it everywhere. But like a large part of the of Manhattan is just empty because people just buy the properties and leave them empty. And they've been doing this with groups too. They just have been coming up with, if you're into golf, there was a competitor. They came up with their own competitor for golf, and they went up against the PGA, and the PGA freaked out and had to like completely redo their entire fee structure because of it, because the Saudi Arabian golf tournament was paying more money. Long story short, there you go. Anyhow, Embracer Group had to save money, so they're spinning off 3 different companies. Asmodee is going to be its own company. What were the other 2? Looks like, let's see, Asmodee, Coffee Stain will become 2 new listings on the NASDAQ in Stockholm, and Middle-earth will remain within the Embracer Group. What makes this more complex is that these are publicly traded companies, so this isn't like them just splitting them off. There's a lot of rules, a lot of regulation. It's very expensive to do this. And so Asmodee is going to focus on tabletop games, while Coffee Stain's titles will range from indie AA for PC, console, and mobile. And then Middle Enterprises and Friends will concentrate on AAA gaming for PC and consoles, such as Lord of the Rings and Tomb Raider. Why Tomb Raider? Who knows? They bought a lot of franchises, so they're kind of mixing and matching them right now.
So like, I'm interested mostly because I know that you have a lot of insights into how these kind of things work. And one of the things that I had heard that could be a warning sign for Wizards, because at first I would think Wizards and Asmodee being out from under these overlords would be good. But Asmodee was apparently loaded up with almost $1 billion, $900 million of debt.
Yes.
From Embracer Group as a way for Embracer Group to jettison it off, and that cannot be good for them. And that could, if Hasbro ever did split off WoTC, which I don't think it will, because WoTC is making them so much money compared to the rest. But if it did, it probably would also load it up with a bunch of debt too, and that wouldn't be good.
Well, what they do is that if you have one company that's doing really, really well, and you have imagine. So here's a perfect example. Okay. You are a company and you have 3 divisions. Okay, I as the company, Embracer Group, we'll just use an example.
Sure.
We'll say I have $1 billion in debt, and you have 3 divisions, and 2 of the divisions aren't really doing anything, but one division is making a ton of money. So what you do is you say, okay, you, the person who's making all that money, we're going to break you off. We're going to load you up with our debt. So you're going to take all of our debt because you can pay it off. And then the other company, my original company, now has no debt. And suddenly my stock will go up. I can now borrow again. It's a way for me to like re-borrow, because I can't borrow any money once you have all that debt. So you basically robbing Peter to pay Paul. So you're letting someone off. Like you're saying, okay, you know, you have Asmodee, go off into the sunset. You do your own thing. Yes, we'll still own a large part of it, but you're your own company. Oh, and by the way, as a parting gift, here's all this debt that you're going to have to pay back. And now we have no debt. The Embracer Group has no debt. And now, if we want, we can now borrow another $1 billion. And in a way, it's to get $2 billion in debt.
So how is that allowed? You said there are a lot of regulations on doing this. How is that allowed?
It's allowed.
Where you just throw your debt onto somebody else and like, that's their problem now.
It's allowed. It's just, that's exactly what happened to Toys R Us. That's exactly what happened. This happens all the time.
Yeah, I know about the Toys R Us, the Bane.
And KB Toys. It's actually very popular. And this is what Bain Capital and a lot of these companies do, is that they will find, like, so Bain Capital did this with Toys R Us, is that people say Toys R Us went out of business because people didn't want toys. No, they went out of business because they were bought out by, I believe it was Bain Capital, and they were loaded up with a ton of debt. The company was incredibly healthy. It was very well managed. They had, like, people were working there for like 15 years, 20 years. They had great benefits. People loved working there. And they were good full-time jobs. They somehow get these companies fairly cheap. They, get them for undervalued. They buy the companies. They load them up with debt. They basically take their debt. They put into the company. They also then, the second thing they can do is then also take as many assets out of the company as possible by paying themselves big bonuses, like the CEOs, and they'll say, okay, yeah, I assign myself as president of Toys R Us, who's also the president of, like, you could be president of multiple companies, and then you pay yourself a salary of like $20 million as president of Toys R Us, and you just basically, you raid them, take all their assets, load them up with debt, and then they go bankrupt. They steal all the money, and then the company goes bankrupt. No one gets paid off. The debt is, like, thrown away. No one gets anything out of it. And then
like,
the original
how is this legal?
It is.
Like,
it just is. That's just, the regulations, the way it works is just because I'm really simplifying it. Because the way it works is that if you have a company and you have debt, you're allowed to move the debt around. And all you're doing is moving the debt around to a company that you're basically going to sacrifice. And that's how it works. Now, in theory, you're thinking, well, why would you do this? Because how much money can you really make? Because they still had to buy. Like, say they bought Toys R Us for $3 billion.
Yeah.
Okay. Which doesn't make sense. And then they steal all this money, and they load it up with $1 billion of debt.
Yeah, how do they make a profit on that?
And then you're like, well, didn't they just lose $2 billion because they went out of business? Not really, because what they look at is this debt is now gone and wiped off the books forever. And a lot of these companies will keep debt permanently, and they don't look at debt the same we do. They look at debt as how much do we have to pay off every month in terms of interest, because that's all they really care about. Like, whether it's $1 billion or $3 billion, it doesn't matter. What are we paying in interest? It's like, well, you're paying $100 million a year, or say $200 million a year, so maybe $20 million a month. Like, okay, that's all it really is, because that's what we're really paying. They gave us. And by the way, the debt is there because they asked for money. So what happens is they'll go to a bank and they'll say, hey, bank, can you give me $1 billion? And they say, sure. Here's $1 billion. You now owe us $100 million a year in interest. They say, cool. And they're paying off that $100 million a year in interest. But now if they, that's all they look at. So what they do is then they take the debt, they load it up with another company, it's wiped off the books completely. And if that debt's been around for so long that to them, and don't forget, over time money is worth less, is that $3 billion that they had maybe is down to $1 billion. If you compound it over time, you do write-offs, you're not paying taxes. By the way, that's considered a loss, so you don't have to pay taxes. So if you look at it over time, you're either breaking even or saving money, because maybe you don't have to pay taxes because it's a loss. Maybe you're stealing the money. You, as in the C-suite, the top people, the executives, only the top 20 people are getting these salaries, and they're getting millions of dollars while everyone else is getting fired. So they make a profit. The company, maybe it's a wash. Maybe they lose a little bit. Maybe they gain a little bit. But in the end, the people specifically got more benefits than not. It's really, I'm trying to really simplify it, but does that kind of make sense?
I think I understand how it works. I still think it shouldn't be allowed, but that's above our pay grade on this channel, I guess.
Well, it's not that. It's very complex. It's very, very complex, but they basically crunch the numbers, they look at it, and they say, can we make money? You ever see, it's like, okay, the perfect example. The producers. where they're like,
Mhm.
we can
Yeah,
make more
exactly.
money
By
putting
failing on a musical and that we knew would fail in advance, where we funded it over 100%, and we know that we now have to return over 100% investments, but it's going to lose money, so therefore
Right.
we just pocket the rest.
Right. That's basically what they're doing.
But the producers went to jail at the end, Stephen.
Yeah, but well, I didn't say some of these people don't go to jail.
Okay,
'Cause-
fair. Then
Some of them
if
do.
the answer to that it isn't necessarily legal, then
No, it's legal.
I am satisfied.
No, this
but if
is
it
legal.
is
This
legal,
No, it's legal. This actually, someone did tweet out.
then it's different than the producers, because the producers was breaking the law.
Well, because they sold over 100%.
Yes.
They sold like 20,000% of the musical, and then when everyone asked for money, they didn't have the money. That's a Ponzi scheme. That's different. So what the producers did is what Madoff did.
Yes.
So that's exactly what he did, by the way. So they're asking if someone did ask, is this legal because it's in Sweden? I don't know, but I don't. The thing is that there are laws about like what percentage of debt you can load up on a company. So, for example, New York City has these laws. Like, you can't say, so imagine the company's worth $1 billion. You can't put $5 billion of debt on a company only worth $1 billion. So there are laws of like, okay, if the company's worth $1 billion, maybe you can only put 10, 20, 50% of the company into debt. I really don't want to get into it, but that's actually where the banking financial crisis came from, if you remember that, from like 15 years ago, because the reason for that is because before the financial crisis, banks were allowed to have, I think it was they had to have at least 5 times more money. No, they can take out 5 times more money than they had in the bank. So if they had $1 billion in a bank, they can loan out up to $5 billion. But then the rules were changed to 30 times. So they're like, ooh, now we can loan out $30 billion, which is fine because I'm worth $1 billion, but I'm going to loan out $30 billion. But then all those companies failed, and then they started to collect, and the banks didn't have the money because they loaned out 300%, or sorry, 3,000% more than they're worth. Yeah, 3,000, and then they all went out of business. That's literally the banking financial scam, because they're like, whoops, we don't got the money. So,
well, it sounds like this not only should be illegal, but also causes catastrophic consequences for the world economy sometimes, Stephen.
Yeah, and what ended up, literally the United States had to save those banks because they didn't. It was like, here's the option: you can collapse, which did happen to who was it? The one Lehman Brothers collapsed. They let Lehman Brothers collapse, and when they saw how much damage it did to the world economy, that was the first and last time they did it, because they saw it was so bad and had such repercussions throughout the entire world that if another one did, it could have just crashed the world economy. It was real like that. When that was happening, I couldn't sleep. Because so the United States almost ran out of capital because they were loaning so much. Again, this is way above everyone's pay grade. Long story short.
I think it's interesting, though. That's part of why I wanted to hear this on this channel. Yeah. And this would have possibly even been the main episode topic if there hadn't been such an interesting Hasbro investor call.
Because I don't want to be the only one talking here on this. Because it's like, it's so complex that I'm barely even scratching the surface. But very long story short, the Embracer Group is giving debt to other companies. They're letting them go. And those companies should be okay because Asmodee does very well. And hopefully that they don't load them up with so much debt that it makes Asmodee not be able to do their job. And it just makes them go the route of Toys R Us or KB Toys. I don't think they will, but I didn't look at the numbers. So it's really bad. It's really bad. Let's see.
All right.
Well, there's so many questions.
I think that's good enough for now.
Yeah,
but it answered some of my major questions that I wanted to hear from you. I figured the viewers would want to hear it too if I was really interested to hear it.
Well, I'll answer. This is what they would do. So if if they did split off WoTC as its
Yes.
own company, because Hasbro has about $3 billion in debt, they would probably do that, and we're going to see the numbers why, because WoTC and the digital group makes all the money. And this is why it is legal, because the other option is, which would you rather do, Mark? Think of it this way. I have a company like Hasbro, and Hasbro is making money only in a few divisions. It's making money on Magic the Gathering and the digital products. But let's just say D&D doesn't make money, the toy division doesn't make money, nothing else is making money, and I have $3 billion in debt. So here's the two options. I can either make a new company of just WoTC and then go out of business, and then Hasbro goes out of business and wipes out all those jobs and $3 billion in debt. So it's like sending out a lifeboat, but WoTC is still okay, because WoTC is now the profitable company. So you let the old company that really is just dead weight, and you let them go.
And the other option is you send out the company that's performing well, but you load them up with so much debt that they die even though they were performing well. Then your other company that was not in a good shape, at least it doesn't have any debt, but it's bad, and it probably dies eventually too, and you lose all of the jobs from both.
Or you load it up with the right amount of debt so it can actually pay it off, and you have both companies do okay, which is what you're supposed to do. So it's hard to say.
I get when you're splitting off that like you might want to split some of the things off. It probably wouldn't be fair to like completely put it all in one place or on the other, but loading it all up onto a ship that you're planning on sinking just seems like a serious problem.
Yeah. No, I mean, but that's basically the concept is you would do the right thing because you want your companies to stay in business, and businesses should be like people and want to live and not die. But that's not realistic. And unfortunately, that's the problem, is that companies are not people, and companies are sacrificed all the time and used in very nasty ways, whether it's like reverse stock splits, or like going public through a shell company, or like loading up debt to profiteer, corporate raiding, steal all the assets, steal all the money, have that company go out of business while a couple of people at the top just take millions of dollars in profit. You know, it's bad. I mean, look, it's bad. So anyhow, do any of you understand how debt works with large companies? Even the most profitable companies are flush with cash, carry a large amount of debt. Yeah, because the only thing you need to pay off for the debt, as I said, is the interest. And as long as they're paying the interest, that's okay. You're right, and a lot of companies flush with cash do have debt, but it still hurts their stock, because when you look at the stock, they do take into consideration the stock price when you look at the debt, the debt earnings ratio. So you do look to see how much debt they have, because they'll take it out of the overall cost. Like right now, Hasbro, which actually went up a lot today, it's like 60 something. If they didn't have $3 billion in debt, their price would probably be closer to like $90 a share, maybe even 100. But because they have the debt, it's factored into the price of the stock, and it's much lower. And that's why you have companies like Apple and these other companies that have no debt that are very scary. In fact, Apple has no debt and so much in cash, they actually don't even know what to do with it. They have so much billions and billions and billions in cash that they literally have trouble putting it into places and banks and countries because it's so much. That's the other end. It's ridiculous because it's not easy to move around like levels of money that big. It's crazy. Anyhow, enough of that topic. Let's go to a different topic. I think we beat that with death. Sorry if anyone got bored there. But here's a fascinating one. Okay, everyone's going crazy over this one. Warhammer 40K. Now, let me explain to you what happened, Mark, and gets fascinating. Okay, so 40K has been around for a long time, since I was a kid. And 40K has very strict lore. And the lore is very misogynistic. It's very brutal. I mean, this is like as brutal as there can be.
Yeah, I'm aware of some of the problematic lore in 40K.
So you have this very problematic lore because when 40K was made, the world was a different place. It was the 80s. Sure. No one cared about this stuff. Like, you know, it was a very small segment that, you know, it was just 99% guys. No one wrote about this. No one cared.
If you're going to draw a comparison to something that WoTC had a recent re-release of, like Spelljammer, the Hadozi, those like monkey people who were like based on some very uncomfortable racist black stereotypes originally, are another example of something that was produced back in that time. And that a company would have to make decisions about what are they going to do in the new edition? What are they going to do in 2024 with the Hadozi? And I think that's parallel to the questions that Warhammer had to ask themselves as well.
Well, this is what happened. So Warhammer, since it started at some little company, you know, and a couple guys just having fun and writing some crazy, crazy lore, it has now become a publicly traded company. But more importantly, and this is where supposedly all the issues come from, is that it's going to be a show on Amazon. Now, the first thing that happens when you're in a show on Amazon is that they're going to take a look at the roles and say, okay, who can we have play the female leads and what can the females play?
I see. And when they say which women can we cast, and they're like, well, in the lore, nobody.
Right. And that's the thing. It's like, well, who can you cast? There's no women. It's like, what do you mean there's no women? It was like, there's, like in this part of the world, it's like, well, if we're going to tell the stories of the Custodes, Custodes are basically the Spartans of the Warhammer universe. And in Sparta, there were no female Spartans, okay? You don't need to know a lot about Spartan history, but
I mean, there were women who were Spartans, but you're talking about the warriors. You're not talking about like in Sparta.
No.
Yeah, the way they were, the way that women were treated in actual Sparta was horrible.
Yes.
It was. The way that pretty much anyone was treated in Sparta was really bad. Like they sent like young Spartans who were about to like become full warriors out for a coming of age ceremony called the Crypteia, where they rambled around the countryside murdering peasants, and women were treated horribly there too. So like it is historically accurate, but all that being said, it's a very uncomfortable like sort of aspect of history. It's not necessarily something that people would want in an Amazon show. So I see why Amazon would be potentially leery of that.
Well, this is by the way, women in like Roman culture didn't even have names. Okay, that's how. Like, imagine that. It's like their names were their family, their father's name. Like it's pretty brutal. Anyhow,
yeah, like Julia, like Caesar's daughter, because the Julius family.
So this is what's really happening is that Warhammer came out and rewrote the lore, and they're not even coming out with female Custodes armies. Okay, they just said that, oh, by the way, there were always female Custodes, but according to the lore, that's not true. So people are kind of losing their minds in the group because you have to make a decision when something like that is there. Do you retcon and just say it was always this way, or do you make an in-universe change if you want to change something about the lore, which is another option, which is different than a retcon? You don't. Those are kind of two of your options. You can also just keep it in there as a third option, but that's can be seriously a dangerous and fraught path to take. But retcon versus changes. So if you make a change and it's reflected in the lore, that can be satisfying to both old and new fans alike. However, depending on what you're doing, it may not make sense or be easy to make a change that's reflected in the lore, and it might restrict your ability to like use the new aspects as well. So it's something that you have to think about, because I generally prefer, if possible, and if it works well, and if it doesn't create more problems than it solves, to try to find a way that
any change you're making with a new edition or with a new presentation of something can be reflected in the lore. So you can see, like, for instance, I guess when Paizo had slavery was abolished in Absalom, and there had been a lot of slavery in Absalom. It was abolished in Absalom, and then it's generally not talked about further in future products. But there was a lot of sort of stories and plot lines that led up to that. And I think that that's a good way to do it if you can, but you can't always do it that way as well.
So someone, by the way, does point out there are female armies. There's actually the Sisters of Silence, but the Sisters of Silence don't talk. So that's a non-starter. I mean, it's like, okay, let's put them in an Amazon show. None of them talk. Okay, great. They're not going to do that. There is the Sisters of Battle. There are women in the universe, but obviously whoever's writing the show and whoever's the showrunners, it looks like they're going for a Custodes. Okay, so the Custodes are the guards of the Emperor. And I'm not an expert on the 40K lore. I don't know it nearly as well as anyone else, but I know the general gist is they are the guards of the Emperor. I am guessing they're probably going to have the Emperor, which means they're going to have people around the Emperor as part of the show. That they're not going, you can do it a couple ways. You can either talk about some random scrub in the middle of nowhere, that's usually how these shows work, or you're going all the way to the very top and you're gonna be talking about, like, Dune, you're gonna be talking about the emperors and the top people, and it sounds like they're going that way. They're gonna make this about the top people in the world of 40K. Unfortunately, if you're going that way, it's all men. Okay, there's no women at that level. It's all
I'm going to have to take your word for this because I'm not deeply knowledgeable about the 40K lore.
Okay. The Sisters of Silence talk? I thought the Sisters of Silence didn't talk.
Some people in chat are saying that it is something different, and they could be right. Just
okay. They use sign language? I thought they didn't talk. Yes, I know they communicate, but I don't think they actually physically talk.
Well, I mean, sign language is talking.
Okay, fair enough. What I meant
thought that they communicated only through, like, some empath abilities or something like that.
Well, the point is that this is, and look, if I had my brother on here, he could talk about it. It's like they look at it and when they'll put together a show, is that, especially nowadays, okay, there's this thing called the algorithm, and I just read about this, is that Knight's Tale. If anyone's seen A Knight's Tale, it's funny. Knight's Tale came out. It wasn't that popular of a movie. It has gotten very popular since it came out. And the people who did A Knight's Tale, even though Keith Ledger's dead, they were going to do based on his daughter. And they came out with a script. They even had a producer. They went to Netflix and they said, can we do a sequel? Because it looks like it's really popular. They put it through their algorithm, and Netflix said it will not be successful based on the algorithm. And so that is why they didn't do the show. I guarantee.
I remember seeing a clip that was satirical about this problem with the streaming services in, like, some kind of comedy show that I haven't mostly watched, that's about people trying to make movies and TV shows, where this lady comes out and she's just like, so I really loved your pilot, and it's doing super well with popularity, and people rate it really high, but we're going to have to cancel it.
Yep.
And they're like, why? It's like, well, the algorithm says. The algorithm's always right.
That was the last season of Barry. Barry did that.
Okay.
Yeah, that's what it was, actually. So if you watch Barry on HBO, that's exactly what happens in that season, is that one of the main characters comes up with this incredibly popular show. It's getting fantastic reviews. It comes out on the streaming service, and then it's canceled that same day because the algorithm said it would not be popular. And that's it. With that being said, they go through and they put the stuff in the algorithm, and they figure out who and what will make this popular. And it has to hit certain demographics. And now they're going backwards and saying, okay, we need to have X, Y, and Z in this lore. So you need to rewrite the lore in the world of Warhammer for the show. So, with that all being said, What do you think of that, Mark? Because it's weird how our hobby went from this little thing that was created without any thought, just some guys sitting around playing war games, to now it is becoming so popular and a publicly traded company worth billions of dollars, and now it's going to be made a multi-billion-dollar series on Netflix that you have to change the lore and change what the property is to make it work in mainstream media.
I just don't know enough about Warhammer 40K to
I'm
know
just talking about
if
the regular
this is
concept.
so deeply into the identity. To me, it feels, as a person who does not know about Warhammer 40K, all right, it feels like it's not that hard. To me, it's not that big of a change. But that's because I don't know about the property. Maybe it's a much bigger change than I think. To me, it's like it's almost like to allow someone to play and be a part of a major group or organization that's in the setting, and to play a character with a gender that matches theirs in the game. Not even talking about the Amazon TV series seems like a good thing. But again, I don't know enough about the setting. Maybe this is, obviously there's a lot of backlash, right? So maybe this is a bigger deal in the setting than I think it is, because I'm not a Warhammer 40K aficionado. But to me, this is just kind of like an example of the difficulties and how tricky it can be when you're dealing with old canon and you're making a new edition, you're making a new version of something, and you have to decide between retcons versus an in-world event or something else like that.
I mean, so just so you know, this happens so frequently, and I see some people are upset. It's like, okay, we're not getting the lore exactly right, but it's not about the lore. It doesn't even matter.
Steven, the problem with this as an entire topic for us is that I don't know about it.
No,
and it
I
seems
understand.
like some of the people in the chat
wait,
know a lot of detailed facts about it. So like, why are we the two people who are talking about this topic?
Because I'm talking about changing your product for Hollywood. That's what, and going mainstream. For example, Magic the Gathering, because it can work. Here's what time it works. So Magic the Gathering, when they were trying to sell Magic the Gathering to Hollywood, they kept coming up against this problem, which is, who are your protagonists? Who are your people? And they had nothing.
This is before they had Planeswalkers as a big deal. They were in the background, but they weren't like a card and a specific type of card back then.
So they literally invented Planeswalkers for Hollywood. So they would have central characters that they can then put into stories and then make books or movies or TV shows about those characters.
And that arguably helped the lore for Magic. I think that they were able to enrich it by that was feedback and a critique that turned out to be for the better. So it's not a guarantee that when Hollywood wants to do something or when an adaptation wants to do something that it's always going to be worse than the original. Sometimes it is. Yeah. One of the greatest examples of one that really gets you, though, is where people often say, well, you know, I wish they'd had the original person work on this adaptation. It would have been better. But Promised Neverland is a manga and an anime, and season 2 of Promised Neverland, which the anime was made by the original mangaka who had done the manga, and it is widely panned because it vastly goes away from the original storyline, because the original author was like, I don't like the original storyline. I'm going to do something else. And it's an example of how even the original artist can sometimes make a decision that people will be not as happy about in the adaptation. It's very, very tricky when you're going between different media, and sometimes the adapted version is actually awesome or has some new cool thing that you've never seen before. And sometimes, for sure, it can cause problems. We all have in our head movies that don't live up to a book that the movie was based on, video games that don't live up to the movie or the property that the video game was based on. Dozens of those examples, hundreds of those. So it's just overall adapting into another medium can be a tricky thing.
Well, that's really all it's at, is that when you take these media properties that are 40, 50, 60, 70 years old that are really not mainstream and really probably shouldn't be mainstream. And it's being done by algorithms.
Someone in chat said there is no season 2 of Promises Neverland. Mark is wrong. It never happened. That's how bad it was, everybody. You're right. Jege is not technically right for anyone who's watching it and is getting their information out of it. The you're right is playing along with the pretending it never happened.
I get it. People are trying to blanket out their memory. So anyhow, so the world of Warhammer world is on fire because people are losing their minds because there's female custodies now written into the lore.
So let's go to the WoTC investor call, though.
All right,
I'm really curious because I was not able to watch the whole thing.
Well, there's one before that, which is the same topic, is that Hasbro yesterday licensed their Power Rangers toys. They awarded the global rights, except Asia, to produce and distribute Power Ranger toys to Playmate Toys. So basically, the Mighty Morphing Power Rangers toy line, planned for 2025 launch, is now being done by Playmates. This includes action figures, plushies, role-playing, vehicles, and accessories. Why does that matter? Well, we're going to go through that, because that is the beginning of the topic of, what did that make the money and doing pretty well? And the answer was, I guess, but not well enough. Oh, by the way, Warhammer lore changes. So Super Chat says, Warhammer lore changes all the time. People are getting upset more at the representation is suspect. So you're right.
This is the kind of context I do not have because I'm not as much into Warhammer. If it changes all the time, if it's always between each edition, they're changing other things up, then I say, if that's the case, what's the big deal here? Yes, it may have been interference from Amazon. Okay, but this lets more people play the character that they want to play. There's opening up options. It's not like they restricted it, right? It's not like they were like, now that Space Marine group that you wanted to join before is all women, and your character can't be in it anymore after the retcon, right? Because that is the kind of thing that lowers the number of characters you can play. But if they do make lots of changes, which, to be clear, I literally do not know enough to say if it would be wrong or right to accept what Mr. Bandana had said at face value.
Yeah, but I don't know. I won't get into it because there's good changes and there's bad changes. And when you start opening up that door, it's like, are you doing this because there's a good reason in the lore? Are you doing it to sell toys? Are you doing it to appease Amazon? And it's sort of like, it just feels lazy. Like coming up with a new faction and changing the lore so the new faction fits into the lore. In a weird way, it's like, in my mind, that's considered, that's okay. It's like, okay, that's fine. You're like adding these cool new factions and let's adjust the lore so we can make sure, because and they can just say, it's like, we didn't have this didn't exist 10 years ago. We just literally invented it. So we're adjusting the lore so that it fits in and it has a little bit of history. And I think people are like, oh, that's okay. But if they're like, oh, we're adjusting the lore because we just want to make a new set of models and make more money off of you, but that's not okay. And it's like, well, what's the difference? And I guess it's just presentation and the end game. And the end game is like, are you making the game better, or are you making the game worse, or are you just changing the game to make money? Does that make sense?
So some people were talking about Wheel of Time Amazon series in chat, and that was definitely a fascinating one. I don't want to get too much into a rabbit hole, but I feel like a lot of things that they changed had to be changed because of how long the books were. And some of the changes were very clever and good, but there were definitely a few that made me scratch my head.
Yeah,
as someone who really liked as a kid reading the Wheel of Time books, they don't hold up all the way now, but there are some changes, like I guess spoilers for the Amazon Wheel of Time series right at the beginning, but Perrin gaining a wife only to have her be fridged and killed immediately was just like, that was my example of what?
All right. Well, there's lots
Let's
of.
go
If
to
anyone's
Hasbro
watching,
and Power Rangers, though.
If anyone
I really want to know what the big. So, what's the big deal with the Power Rangers thing you were about to tell us?
Okay, so the big thing with the Power Rangers, and let's switch to the side-by-side view. Ta-da! Is that today? Oh, we got another super chat. Oh, let's go back.
Yeah, they said would have been better to make a new faction. As far as Wheel, that was total trash. They're probably talking about the parent-wife situation. That was...
I didn't watch it.
There were some cool things in it. There were some extra scenes they added that I thought were good, but there was some very questionable stuff too.
Let me change this.
So let's power range.
Okay, so Hasbro had their earnings today, and they were surprisingly okay. And in fact, the stock is way up because they beat their estimated earnings. But did they? Did they really? I'm not going to go into this in extreme detail, but I'm going to point out a couple of things in here just to... So Hasbro's total revenue declined 24%. Okay,
so went down 24% since last quarter. Is that right? And last quarter, it already had gone down a significant amount.
No, that is from last...
last year's first quarter.
Yeah.
Is that right? So that's actually not that bad because it was down by much more percent in the other previous quarters to the year before that.
So I'm looking here. So there's a couple things in here. First of all, let's look at this one. Wizards of the Coast and digital gaming segment grew 7% behind the growth of Magic the Gathering and ongoing strength in licensed digital gaming. Let's remember that little tidbit right there. So by the way, I always like to see this picture because this always represents who's making the money for them. And you have Baldur's Gate right here, Baldur's Gate 3. That is like, I don't think Baldur's Gate 3 and Monopoly Go is ever going to leave this report. They've been in every single earnings report ever since those things came out, and I don't think they're ever going to leave because that's making them all their money, especially Monopoly Go. This just came out, the Fallout Magic card set, because right now Fallout is the new hotness, because it's actually fascinating is that the Fallout TV show, which I'm only halfway through, but it's excellent. I really like it a lot. It's a little, it drags a little, but it's so good. It's just excellent acting. Walton Goggins is so freaking good. I love him in everything. It's a very good series. It looks fantastic because the power armor is physical armor. So it's really popular. So they're smart. They put that in there and they got a Fallout set. And right now, the Fallout servers are straining under the add-on servers are crashing and straining under the weight because so many people are now downloading Fallout like 2 and 3 and 4 and New Vegas to play it for the first time because of the TV show that and the role-playing game's totally sold out. It's like you can't get the role. It's just like it's the Baldur's 3 effect. It's like everyone's interested in Fallout all of a sudden. Like Peppa Pig supposedly did really, really well. These Furblets did really well. And Monopoly's always there because they own Monopoly and they want everyone to remember that they own Monopoly. But here's the thing. Okay, let's take a look at this. See if I can hide this side. I don't really need this side thing. Let's leave it. So, Wizards and Digital Gaming made $316 million, and it's up 7%. And it had a profit of $123 million. Consumer products. Consumer products is anything physical, toys, plushies, games, all that fun stuff. Anything that's not Magic, digital, or D&D. And that made $413 million. There was a time not too long ago when Wizards of the Coast was never even mentioned. They weren't even in these reports ever. I mean, they weren't even a side. They weren't even here. Everything was physical toy sales. And Wizards of the Coast wasn't even a footnote. It wasn't even there.
Consumer products lost money.
Yeah.
The 413, the operating profit parentheses loss was a $47 million loss.
Yeah. So
I thought that you were saying that they made about 10% of it back in profit for the other ones, but really they actually lost money.
No. Oh yeah, no. And in fact, if you look at it here, operating margin. So the operating margin of Wizards of the Coast is 38.3%. Consumer products is minus 11.4%.
If you add all of the non-WoTC stuff together, it still lost money. It lost $6 million dollars.
There's Hasbro too. There's Hasbro.
No,
overall.
but look, if you add consumer products to entertainment to corporate and other, all of that, it still lost $6 million. And then the Wizards and digital gaming, obviously there's some like Monopoly Go.
These three together lost more.
Yeah, the three on the right still lost money because consumer products lost so much money.
Yes.
And it's all like Wizards made the money.
Yes. Wizards is holding up
Wizards
the whole
and
company.
digital gaming, which may include Monopoly Go.
Yes, which it does. It does. So just to show you, Wizards is, and I keep saying this, they're holding up the whole company because they are. Okay, it's like this part here, Wizards made more money than everything else combined.
That's because everything else combined lost money, so that's not hard. But it also made a lot of money, and everything else combined lost a lot of money.
Yeah, which is why they wanted to break it out like 2 years ago, because they saw this coming. And imagine they did. Wizards of the Coast stock would be out of sight.
And Hasbro would be done.
Hasbro would be done.
With a $6 million loss as their entire thing. That would not be good. Yeah. I mean, maybe they wouldn't be done, but it certainly would be a huge problem.
Yeah. No, it's crazy. So this is the thing. It's like they're losing so much money. And they realize that. This is adjusted. We don't have to do that. This is sort of operating margins. It just breaks out like how much they're spending and getting in each division. So this is something else they did. So the Hasbro-owned inventory reduction. This is something else they're doing to save money, is that they're reducing their inventory. So just last year at this time, they had $713 million in inventory. And remember, they were selling all their toys at Ollie's and everything else?
The Ollie's thing that we reported on, and a lot of other people did too.
They were purposely liquidating. They're liquidating their inventory.
Look at that graph. It went way down.
It's insane. I mean, look at that. It's like they have gotten... Look at that. The total inventory is down like 57%. I mean, that's really... So what they did is they looked at all their inventory, they saw what's selling and what's not, and they're like, that's it. And they sold it to Ollie's and these other stores for nothing. They're just they're literally liquidating it. Now, this is very common. If you go to outlet stores, I'm sure people know what outlet stores are. That's what outlet stores are. They're people that have stuff that just doesn't sell, and they want to get rid of it, and they can write it off as a loss. And they also want to get it out of the warehouse because it costs money to warehouse this stuff. So they have a couple of options. They can either destroy it, which is actually very expensive. It's very expensive to destroy inventory because if you have to landfill it, you got to pay for that. So would you rather pay to destroy your inventory or sell it for pennies on the dollar to Ollie's and have it taken off your hands? And you don't have to worry about warehousing it. You don't have to worry about inventorying it. Sure, you might lose money or make nothing, but it's better than actually spending money to get rid of it, which is what happens if you destroy inventory. So they sell it. And yes, they can take a hit because it looks like, oh, Hasbro's doing terrible. Look, all their stuff is in Ollie's. All their stuff is in all these discount stores. Kind of. I mean, yes, the stuff that's not selling is there. But now they're closing warehouses, which they're doing, which saves them a lot of money. They are firing workers, which is, I'm not making light of it, but that's what happens. It's like, well, if we literally got rid of 57% of our inventory, we can get rid of 50% of our inventory warehousing and warehousing workers because we don't need them anymore. That saves them a lot of money. And there's things you can do with inventory management in terms of debt earning ratios, things like that I won't get into. But here we go. Look at this. Customer products performance, okay? This is during Christmas. This is compared to last year's Christmas. This is physical products, physical toys, down 21%. That is insane.
What is volume and mix? That also was down by a lot.
The volume and mix is the actual products themselves.
Oh,
So,
okay. So the others are just little things on the margin
yeah, they have
where
like selling
exited
rate,
business.
licensing, FX,
Okay.
exited businesses they're not in anymore. But you see, revenue decline driven by broader market softness in key categories, which is to say their stuff ain't selling. Reduction
Yep.
in closeout volume, which is they got rid of a lot of stuff to Ollie's because they weren't selling them, and timing of Hasbro Pulse initiatives. So that's Hasbro posts some of their other products, their high-end products.
It seems like the euphemism broader market softness in key categories is attempting to claim, well, it's bad for everybody, not just for us in this division, to like take some of the blame off of that minus 21.
Yeah, but to be honest, when they fired all those people, the vast majority of them were was from these divisions.
Yeah,
From the
absolutely.
consumer
We
product
saw
divisions.
that immediately when that happened.
Yeah. But now you look here, the highlights is that Peppa Pig was up 41%, Hasbro Gaming, not exactly sure what Hasbro Gaming is, but that is up 6%, Magic the Gathering is up 4%, and D&D is worth 3%. I think Hasbro Gaming includes digital. And the main thing I wanted to talk about is, and I've been saying this for a long time, is that what they're going to start doing is becoming what's called the holding company. And holding companies, so Marvel's a holding company, in a way, is that Marvel has all these brands, and they weren't making action figures. You know who was making Marvel action figures? Hasbro. Hasbro made the Marvel action figures. So what happened is Disney says, hey, we have all the Marvel brands, and what we want to do is we don't have the capacity or the money to actually make action figures for all of our Marvel brands and our new movies coming out. So we'll sell it to you, Hasbro, and you make the action figures and you sell it and you pay us a fee and then you keep the money. The problem was last year, Disney movies did atrocious, which then meant their action figures did atrocious. And when if you license the wrong things, then you're not making any money. So,
by the way, Steven, do you have any idea why Peppa Pig was up 41%? That seems to be like a lot since
well,
the
they
other
had the
things were only
game
up by
that came
6,
out.
4,
The
and
video
3.
game just came out, and the video game.
Oh, so it went from not having a video game to having
The
a
video
video
game
game.
did
That's a
very
very
well.
good reason to go up to 41%.
That's one of the reasons. They also came out with something else. I forgot what they came out with. They came out with that Tales, the Peppa Pig Tales. Actually, I think that's the video game. Let's see, Peppa Pig.
Yeah, I think
Tales.
it is. It was on the their front page of things. Something called Peppa Pig Tales was definitely listed along with Monopoly Go in their little pictures.
Yeah, I mean, they made some money. I mean, it was a game that did. Look, that's how you make money. I used to do the Hasbro, not Hasbro. I used to do Nickelodeon and Scholastic games, and Peppa Pig's very popular. My kids used to watch it. It's pretty good too. It's very, very popular, and if if your kid is screaming, it's like Peppa Pig, Peppa Pig. It's like, here's $20, $30. I'll buy the Peppa Pig video game. Kids sit in front of it, have some fun stuff. So that's how they make money. They do have cash, as you can see. They do have enough cash, which is surprising. But here's the biggest one.
Is part of that from their selling off the stuff from Ollie's to liquidate it into some amount of cash?
Yeah, that, and also they're just keeping cash around. Like, I mean, they're always they're actually making money. They're just not. You know what? When you fire a third of your company, you suddenly got a lot more cash around. So,
and I guess we saw that WoTC had enough of and WoTC and digital gaming had enough of a surplus to make up for the losses on the other side as well.
But here's the biggest one. So here we go. The guidance here. Look at this.
Okay.
So digital with the digital, Wizards of the Coast and digital gaming, where 3 to 5% decline. All right, that's fine. It's flat. They expected to be flat this year. That's flat. The margin on the profit is 38 to 40%. That is okay. I'll leave it at this. If a company has a 10% profit margin on something, that's a lot. Okay, this is what software companies get. This is why, Apple and Amazon and Google are trillion-dollar companies. It's because their profit margins are so high based on what they spend. Then you have consumer products, which is physical products. First of all, again, declining. And it keeps declining. But this is year after year after year because less and less people are buying physical products. And they
look at that profit margin. It's not very high.
To 6%. But that's what it is. You make very, very little on these toys. These toys make no money. And they were able to survive on this through volume. Because they would sell so many toys that, I'm only making 5, 6, 7%, but we're selling so many that they can make their entire company based off of that. But if you're going to make 38% profit margin on digital properties, why would you do anything else? I mean, seriously. Like, is there a point? Like, I mean, I almost hate to say it. It's like, I kind of see their point. The rest of it is just like where they're like going in the future and their cash flows. We don't have to go through all this. But and actually they did pay off some debt, by the way, right here. They had 3.6 billion and they paid it down to 2.9 billion. They have more cash on hand.
So that's actually 700 million that
they paid off. Yeah.
Where did they get that money?
They had it. I mean, when you start cutting
because even if you take the inventory they sold, which they sold at less than its full value.
Well, they probably would have had more of a profit if they kept the money and didn't pay off the debt.
But that's a good point.
Yeah, they probably they made $2 billion off Monopoly. They made one quarter. They made $1 billion. They didn't make it exactly because they shared with the company.
Yeah, wait, they didn't. If we look at what they made there, they made gross like around 800. Or I guess in this quarter, they made gross about 800 mil.
But they might not record it for this quarter, even though Monopoly Go is about to hit $3 billion in sales. And it's been out for a year. We don't know
what their cut is.
What?
We don't know what their cut is.
We don't know what their cut is, but it's probably...
What, 10, 20%?
10, 20, 30%, yeah.
Oh, okay. So it's definitely made them a lot over time.
So again, the point of this entire segment and what we're talking about is they're going all digital. It's like, I hate to say it, and this is the transition, and you can see it. They're getting rid of their inventory. They're starting to sell off the physical toys, and they're becoming an IP company, which is they're now selling. They have the rights to Power Rangers, and instead of them, a toy company making Power Rangers, they're like, it's just better business for us to literally sell the property to someone else who makes toys, have them make the toys for us. We can then let all those people go. So maybe there was 50, 100 people working on the Power Rangers line. Unfortunately, now it's down to like 3 people because that's all you'll probably need to manage the people who are making it. So all those people lose their jobs. Now they don't have to worry about distribution. They don't have to worry about inventory. They don't have to worry about manufacturing. All they do is that, yes, they'll make less money, but they also have no risk. Because
so I see how you brought it back full circle to the Power Rangers thing.
That's why I'm the best in the business, Mark. But yes, that's the point. Is that I've been saying it for a while that they're going to become a holding company, and holding companies are very common. Is that they own these licenses, and I wouldn't be surprised if you start seeing them license off other properties. They start doing Transformers. They start doing G.I. Joe. They start doing. Well, they're probably not going to do Mr. Potato Head. Mr. Potato Head does pretty well for them. They still do their own Monopoly sets, but you don't know. You don't know who and what they're going to actually start selling off to other people, and they just want to keep the things that make them money in-house. What was very interesting is that they said that Magic the Gathering's latest set, Outlaws of Thunder Junction, had a very strong start, and the sales of the recent Fallout Universes Beyond was doing great. But then they had Murders at Karlov Manor, or Ravnica Remastered, which came out earlier this year. Never even mentioned. Wasn't even mentioned in the call.
Huh.
Which makes you think, I don't think they're selling very well. I've actually heard they're not selling well. Ravnica is like one of the most popular sets. I'm kind of surprised it's not selling. I'm not into Magic as much as I used to. The other thing is, it's a big issue, is they don't have Tales of Middle Earth this year. So last year they made I think over 200 million on Tales of Middle Earth. So they had they got very lucky. Okay, if it wasn't for three things, if they didn't have Baldur's Gate 3, which made them up at this point 91 million, I think it's over 100 million at this point. They made over 100 million, I'll say, on that. Tales of Middle Earth made them over 300 million, and Monopoly Go, which is making them hundreds of millions of dollars. Those three products are basically responsible for almost all their profit. If you think about that, it's kind of scary. Three products out of the thousands that they have. This year...
It says a lot, I guess.
Yeah, but here's the thing. They're not talking about anything like this is going to be a flat year. They've even said like this year is going to be kind of a downer year. And next year, and hopefully next year, is when they're going to start becoming more profitable and start transitioning more to digital. You know what they didn't mention in the call at all?
What?
Dungeons and Dragons, the new version.
No, they didn't even mention that they had the D&D 2024, even though D&D is a relatively big enough brand that it's mentioned in the call sometimes, and this is a major release.
Nope.
It's a major release, and it didn't even get mentioned.
Nope. The CEO nor investors, no one asked about D&D 2024.
Wow. I should have realized because you didn't say anything about it, but
wasn't even mentioned.
I missed it because it's hard to catch something that is missing. But that's very surprising to me that it wasn't even mentioned at all as a factor. Because if anything, if I was in the call and I was trying to excuse stuff being down, I could even say, look at this. WoTC Digital Gaming made this much money. And guess what? We're right before a big release cycle for D&D 2024, which is always when that particular part of the WoTC section is lowest in the market cycle. So this is expected to be up even more. This quarter is like the worst quarter for it. Like if they wanted to make excuses and say they would get even more money later, they could have. They could have used that as an excuse, but they didn't.
They didn't even mention it. It wasn't even like, oh, yeah, we're looking forward to it. It's a big thing. We're excited. Nothing. Crickets. It's just like it's not even in there. It's kind of amazing, and it's almost depressing in a way. It's not even almost. It's depressing. It's like I don't know which is worse. Is that they have D&D, which is making them so much money through Baldur's Gate 3, which they basically have nothing to do with. Or now it's like, oh, they're not even mentioning D&D. It's like it's not even in the call. It's like, does it even matter anymore? Who knows? It's like, and Cynthia Williams, the thing is like, no one knows why she left. So Cynthia Williams, her last day is Friday. She told everyone said last Monday, she informed them that she quit and she's leaving. And I doubt this was really pre-planned because it just happened so quickly and so quietly that...
Wait, so she just suddenly decided to go? It wasn't actually them, or at least they're claiming that in the...
Well, it was done through an SEC filing because it was done so quickly last Wednesday, which we had our last show. It wasn't mentioned. I don't even know if it was mentioned in today's call. It's just sort of just like, oh yeah, by the way, the person in charge of the only division that's making us money quit. So it's like, you think you might want to like talk about that or come up with a plan. It seems like kind of a big deal. We did have a super chat.
Yeah, Jasmine Bryant made a very good point, which said, in all fairness, since the book won't release until late Q3, the Q2 call will probably highlight the fact that, hey, we're down now because, we're at the very tail end of an old edition cycle, but we're going to get this new not an edition that's a big release that will catalyze sales coming next quarter. So expect that. And you're probably right that they'll focus more on it next quarter and then when it releases, they'll focus on it that quarter maybe.
Yeah, no,
but who knows?
Yeah.
We'll have to see. If they don't, what will that say?
Derek, am I president yet? No.
Derek sent a super chat that said, sorry, late. What did I miss? Are you president yet?
So those who don't know, I am actively trying to at least get an interview for the president job for Wizards of the Coast, because we went through it last week and a few others, but I am very qualified for that position, and I'm not
Steven
joking.
weirdly has
I'm
a lot of
qualified.
overlaps.
Very, yeah. I could, yeah. I have a huge amount. Pretty much everything that position calls for, I have experience in, and like 20, 30 years of experience, not just like 5 years. So I could definitely do that job, and I would enjoy it, and I would take it on, and I think I can make them a lot of money, and not just through D&D. Like, I think D&D could be a big part of it, but how to enhance Magic the Gathering, how to enhance the digital properties. I have ideas for a couple of new properties that can make them a couple billion here and there. And actually, I fully embrace. Now, here's the thing. I fully 1,000% embrace our digital future. It's controversial. It's because I don't know.
Would you abolish books altogether, or
No.
would you still keep them for the people who want them as more of the luxury collector's item that they seem to be becoming?
Have I talked to someone in the WoTC executive suite? Not yet, but I can. Actually, I'm getting close. I'm trying to get... yeah, I can.
He's doing his best.
Well, believe it or not, I have a few connections. I actually know a lot of people at WoTC, but they're lower level. They're not executive suite. But I have connections to the C-suite, and so I am trying to I'm trying to just get the interview. If I can get the interview, I'll take care of the rest. And if I get the interview and they're like, no thanks, that's fine. I totally understand. But I want that interview at least. A real man of the people. I forgot what I was saying. Oh, the digital. So, look, there's a lot going on. Toys R Us, when Toys R Us... And I remember that. Now, Toys R Us going out of business had nothing to do with Toys R Us. It had a lot to do with what we said
Being capital.
Of being capital. Before that, there was actually a first warning shot. The first warning shot was when KB Toys went out of business. When KB Toys went out of business, I was thinking to myself, wow, that is not good. I loved KB Toys. And then when Toys R Us went out of business, that was the first seismic charge. And I remember Hasbro and Mattel were like, uh-oh. Because think about how much of how much they sold through Toys R Us. That devastated them. And that was literally the beginning of the end. Because they just lost one of their distribution hubs for selling toys. And they tried to make it up by going to Target and Walmart and H-Mart, the other marts. And they're even selling toys in in Barnes and Noble. Like, they're just trying to sell everywhere. But this year, and I forgot to say that, those companies are reducing their toy sections. And so they're losing out. So they are really losing places to sell toys. They being Hasbro and Mattel. Like, they don't have physical locations to sell toys anymore. And toys, if you think about it, they're big, they're heavy, they take up a lot of space, they break, they need warehousing. Digital? I don't need to tell you. It's digital, baby. You don't need to do any of that stuff. I mean, it's so much easier to deal with. I mean, it's so ridiculous. It's unfortunate, but also if you look at what's going on in today's world, it's that I know I bring this up all the time. It's that kids don't play with toys, and I get 20 people in chat, or afterwards we're going to have my kids play with toys. I have a whole room full of toys. Your kids don't play with toys, okay? Not like they used to, okay? Back when we were kids, you had toys, and that was it. And maybe you had computers, and maybe you had video games. But you had toys, and you had computers and video games. Now, everything is computers and video games. Everything is an iPhone. Everything is an iPad. everything. And they only need one device, and that's it. And yes, you'll buy toys, but not like we used to buy toys. Like that's all you had. I mean, that was the only thing you had. Is that my friends and I, we would have hundreds of action figures, thousands of Legos. We had nothing but toys, rooms full of toys. Now I look at, people's rooms and they'll have books and they'll have a toy here and there, but not like it used to be. Is WizKids going to discontinue minis? The thing is also, WizKids is not this big. So Hasbro, I think it's still a Fortune 500 company. That means it's one of the 500 biggest companies in the United States. That's a big company. Okay, they're at the very bottom of that list. I believe they're like number 498 or something, but they're still on that list. And WizKids is not. Okay, so if you're a small company, you can still make toys. There's still room to be a toy manufacturer. But if you want to become an Apple or Google or a $1 trillion company, it's not going to be by making toys. I hate to break it to you. It's going to be by doing what everyone else is doing, and that's embracing digital. So, I mean, it's kind of sad, but that's where everything is going. And there are benefits to it. There actually is some very good... Is WizKids part of WoTC? I don't think so. I think WizKids...
No, I'm pretty sure it's a completely different.
Yeah, I think it's completely
company.
Separate.
They make Pathfinder miniatures too.
Yeah,
they're a completely different company, unless something weird happened that I did not know about.
So one thing that happened, and there's benefits. I'm going to tell you the good points. So it was made a big deal that they were not going to be printing D&D books in Portuguese anymore, which is one of the largest languages in the world. Portuguese love D&D, and it just wasn't profitable. It was costing too much. The books were costing too much, and they weren't going to do it. But you know what the good news is putting out all the D&D products digitally in Portuguese or Chinese or Japanese or Arabic or any other language is really easy. And suddenly coming out with your game in multiple languages is now easy. And it can be done online, and it can be done cheaply. And you can get the game rules for very little money, as opposed to buying a book that might cost $100. Or down there, I think it was something like, it was a lot. It was something like 10% of a monthly salary. It's like a single book. It was very expensive to buy D&D books. But if they priced them correctly, this is what Netflix does, by the way. And the Netflix changes its pricing subscription based on the economy of the place where they are at. It's not the same price in every country. Every country has their own pricing structure based on the economy of that part of the world, so that people can afford Netflix. So they'll do the same thing. It's that they can change the pricing structure so that it's reasonable, and then more people are going to play it in the long term. So that is actually one of the big advantages of digital books and digital properties, is that it's actually going to make it more accessible, not less. And no one's talking about that. And we put out all of our products digitally. Every single one of our products, pretty much. I can't think of any really that aren't digital. We put out all of our products digitally. And one of the big advantages of doing that is that right now, and I have nothing to do with this, okay? Like, I was talking to people, the shipping, I get shipping prices every year from FedEx and DHL, and the new shipping tables come in February. Shipping went up 30%. 30% from last year. And the year before it went up like 30%. So it's almost up, basically in the last 3 years, it's got like 100%. We'll leave it at that. I have nothing to do with that. I have nothing. And people in Australia are like, dude, what's going on? Your books used to cost like $20 to ship to Australia. Now they're 60. And I'm like, yeah, because that's what it cost. And it sucks. I wish it wasn't, but that's what they're charging us. And it's very difficult to get around that. So that's why I make all of our products digital. And I'm like, okay, it's not perfect, but at least you can access them and play with them digitally. And it's the same price, whether it's digital here or digital there. And unfortunately, that's going to become more and more common, where it's just getting so expensive. Wait until you see board games. By the way, board game sales are going way down. And it has to do both with manufacturing costs and shipping. because in the past these Kickstarters that the manufacturers would eat the shipping costs and just like ship you a 30-pound game for like $20. Well, you can't do that anymore because it literally can cost them $100 to ship that game. So they're just passing on that cost. Those days are gone, by the way. So it's like, yes, you could buy the new board game for $200 and then $150 for shipping for that game, by the way. Or you wait for it to come out at Amazon. Also, Amazon has broken us because everyone thinks shipping is free because Amazon's free. It's not free, by the way. Why don't you talk, little Mark? I got my dog here. Hello, Zoe.
Sure, but I don't really have anything to add about
Say hi.
whether shipping is free or not, other than that it's not. Amazon is hiding the
Zoe.
cost of that.
Hi, Zoe. Want to say hi? Remember, look, this is Zoe.
Hi, Zoe.
This is my dog. She's a Whedon. Zoe. She hangs out with me all day. A little bed back there. She sleeps there all day with me, and she likes to hang out. Do you like role-playing games, Zoe? Yes. Yes. Oh, yes, you do. Oh, good doggy. Good doggy. Hello. Zoe's doing really well. She had gallbladder surgery, as you know, Mark, and then she had her ACL. It's actually, I think, called the PCC. It's like the ACL. She had surgery on her leg, but now she's running and jumping, and she's a brand new dog. Aren't you? You're a brand new dog. It's like a brand new
I'm glad
day.
she's doing well. I know that she was having issues where you had to watch her because she might hurt herself.
No, she is great. She's been doing great. And my other dog's right there, Ruby. Hi, Ruby. I can get her in a second. Ruby runs away, though. So Zoe does not she only lets me pick her up. Doesn't let anyone else pick her up. And then Ruby, anyone can pick up Ruby, but you got to catch her.
You've got to catch her first.
Ooh,
that makes sense.
She doesn't hear her scream. That's her. Because she does not like being picked up. No, you do not. She does not. Ruby, you want to come here? No, she's walking away. Oh, bad YouTube stutter? Don't know about that. So, does anyone have any additional questions about our digital world and where we're going with the world of digital? Because everything's going to go digital. And...
Well, I think we've mentioned that enough times in the past that people probably know your main prognostications, which are now becoming more and more likely with these numbers. But it's fascinating to look at the slides and specifically see the numbers and the breakdowns from this investor call, because I think it gives me a better sense about, like, wow, they literally lost money on everything other than the WoTC digital thing combined, lost money, even with some of them having made a smaller amount. The physical toys lost so much money that the rest was a net red.
What about print on demand? Print on demand is so expensive that print on demand works if you're doing smaller books that are soft cover. Once you try to do hardcover large books, that gets incredibly expensive. And the big problem with print on demand is that if I am selling you something as print on demand, let's just say I'm selling a book that's $50, there's basically no profit, because of that $50, it might cost $30 just for the print on demand part. And then you split that with someone else if you're doing it like on if you're doing it through drive-through. So of that $50 book, you're getting like $6, and you can't make any money doing that. So printing out books it's more expensive, but once you're printing out more than 1,000, 2,000, 3,000 books, it gets pretty cheap. I mean, you could print out books for $3, $4, $5, somewhere between $3 to $5 per book. That doesn't include shipping and include warehousing and distribution and all that, but that's how much books might cost. That's just to print it. But I was actually talking about this yesterday on Jeff's channel, Mark, that this book, because they were saying their topic yesterday was, why is role-playing books so expensive now? So this book is $80. Okay, this just came out. It's 300 and let's see, how many pages is it? 304 pages. And
So it looks like a map.
And it has a map. That's a nice map. And this book, which probably would have been $50 just a few years ago, is now $80. And people are complaining. That seems like a lot for a book. They're like, $80 seems like a lot for this book.
But you get a lot in that book. There's a lot of costs to making that book, to getting the writing, to getting the art, to getting everything that goes into it.
I will guess, and I'm not even including, let's just pretend that all the words in here. So how many words do you think this is, Mark? You do that.
You said it's 304 pages.
Say 300
right?
pages, because there's some indexes and stuff in here. That's
sure.
Just 300 pages.
Okay, so I'm going to roughly estimate that there's around 200,000 words, probably more than 200,000 words.
So 200,000
And so
words.
if Paizo was paying the authors at their at somewhere close to their maximum rate, then they would have spent somewhere around around $25,000 or so on the words alone.
Okay, we'll say about 25,000. I actually think that's maybe even a little low, but we'll say 25,000.
No, I think I rounded down multiple times,
yes.
So it may be more than that, right?
Okay. Yep. Now I'm looking at the art, and I know what the art is costing. I'm gonna say. They have a lot of art in this book.
Yeah,
they have as much art as we do, and there's
a lot of art.
All right, I'm going to do the math. I know how much.
There's at least one full body on every spread, right?
Yeah,
and there's a lot of half pagers and more expensive things.
The art alone for this book, and this is not negotiated. I'm going to say.
My guess would be 50.
No,
that it costs twice as much as the words, but it should be. Could be much more than that.
They have a lot of half pagers. They have a lot of maps.
Then it's gonna be way more.
Once you get into maps,
pagers will easily double the cost while taking about the same amount of page space.
Yeah, no, this is.
Then if it was all half pagers and maps, it could be even approaching 100,000.
It's over 100. No, I'm doing the math. If I sat down and did it, I'm gonna say I actually think this is about 100, at least 100,000, maybe 120. So the art alone for this, I'm just gonna say 100,000.
Okay.
I think it's actually low. I think it's higher than that, but so we'll say for them to make this book, and I didn't even talk about the cover, and this cover alone was probably 2,500. At least for wraparound. Well, this is probably 2,500. Probably 3,000. It's about 3,000 for this cover.
And then there's also development passes. There's editing passes. There's layout passes. There's a lot of people who are doing very important work that are not just the initial authors who I've accounted for in the words.
Yep. So this book, we'll say very conservatively, was $150,000 to develop.
But hold on, only for the freelancers, right?
Right.
Think about this though, is that we've got a this book, which is a huge book. It's probably around a third of the throughput of the Lost Omens line. So if you throw on a bunch of developers and editors on there, and the art and the amount of the art team's bandwidth over the course of the year, and you divide out their salaries by the amount of their year that was spent on this book, that's going to be a significant amount more too.
Yeah.
Right.
So we'll say, 150. We'll say $150,000 to $200,000 to make. Then you have to print it. Okay. So we'll say altogether $250,000 for this freaking book. $250,000. People probably
maybe more. We're lowballing some of these.
Yeah. So people are thinking, oh, why is this book $80? Okay. If I told you this book cost $50,000, you'd probably say that's ridiculous. And if I told you it was $100,000, you're like, no way. I'm telling you, it's probably $200,000, $250,000.
Yeah,
and you're probably thinking
maybe a low estimate.
$250,000 to make this just one book, and the answer is easily. And that's why it's $80, because you got to make your money back. I mean, otherwise you're going to go to business.
You don't know how many of them you're going to sell.
Yeah, and if they're selling it, they don't get to keep. If they sell it directly, they keep that $80. That's true. But if they're selling it through Amazon or through Diamond or through their distributors, they make 30.
Half.
They make 35 to 50% of that $80.
Yeah, half at best.
At best. somewhere we'll say 40%. So you get 40% of that 80. And that's why it went up, because it's like they have to make their money back, man. I mean,
so imagine if your sales are half direct and half not direct, right? And you want to make back 250,000. We're being generous on a lot of things here. But if that's the case, then that means that you would need to, and let's say you get 50%, which is the best you could get for not direct sales. Really, like Steven says, more like 40%. But we've been estimating in the opposite direction like all this time. But if you divide that around, you wind up needing to sell like almost 5,000 just to break even.
Yeah, I just did the math.
Just to break even.
Yeah.
And we underestimated a bunch of the things. Yeah. And so this is why, and imagine you sold it for $50. Now it's even more than that by a huge amount.
Yeah. And
some of those costs didn't go down. Like most, but like none of those costs went down. They were the same cost for you. The cost to print per book, the cost for the art, the cost for the words. So you just need to make more, but if you print more, that actually will up the cost for the printing that Steven kind of just turned into a flat amount. So yeah, there's a lot going on.
Yeah, so it's somewhere between 5,000 to 6,000 copies just to break even. Now, the good news is I know for a fact that they're going to sell probably 10, 20, maybe 10,000 copies of this book, probably. They'll make money on it. They wouldn't do it if they wouldn't, you know. But the point is that but
here's the trick of it, though, yeah. Steven. Yeah. Where it can get tricky and why subscriptions are something they really like is they also have to guess how many they need.
Oh, yeah.
And if they are wrong, they not only pay to print it, but it sits in the Paizo warehouse, which costs money to have the inventory there. It counts as inventory, which is bad for a variety of reasons in certain ways that they just have this non-moving inventory. That is considered part of their assets, but they're not, like, they haven't sold it. So you have to guess correctly how many to make, or it can wind up hurting you if you make the wrong amount. And you won't get as good of a rate if you just do, we'll just guess small and we'll make another print run. You won't get as good of a rate on the print run as well.
Yeah. And by the way, if you look at these books, like, I mean, any one of my books basically start at 50 grand. That's just so you know, like, that's where they start. They start at 50 grand. We have a lot of art and stuff, but that's where you start. That's the base amount for any hardcover book. So that's also one of the reasons that we cheat, because we do it in 5e and Pathfinder. But I still have to print it. So printing it twice costs money, and converting it costs money. But it's these books.
It helps because you don't have to buy the art twice, and art is very, very expensive.
Yeah, art is, which is why you're going to be hearing, you're never going to stop hearing about AI art, because, you know, if you want, like, you're like, okay, I'm going to put in 20 pieces of color art, you know, depending on the sizes, that could be $3,000 to $5,000 for 20 pieces. 20. And it's like, wait.
I mean, that's what it takes to pay for an artist to make you the art.
Yeah, so when you see
that's a book, what it takes for their time and expertise.
Yeah, when you see a book with hundreds of pieces of art, and you're like, oh my God, that art alone was tens of thousands of dollars. That's just for the art. So that's why these books are expensive, and why, unfortunately, they're looking to AI art, because they're like, man, not only can, and it takes a long time. No one even talks about that.
And when you say they, Steven means like some people are.
Some people.
He just showed a Paizo book. Paizo is, to be clear, not looking towards AI art.
They being other people.
Yes.
But if you look at, you know, how long it takes, that's the other thing. So one of my best artists, he can only do 4 pieces a month. So, you know, it's like, I love him. I wish he could do 500 pieces a year, but he can't. You know, he could do like 40, 50 pieces a year, and that's it. So I have to really spread out and give pieces to a whole bunch of people to make sure that they can get the art done. So do art costs reduce if you have an artist on staff? Yes and no, because you have an artist on staff, but they can only do so much. So even if you have
the artist on staff, you're paying their salary. Now, to be clear, having someone who can do art stuff for you on staff is phenomenally good. Okay, because before Paizo hired Kent Hamilton as an art director, who had done work before you can see it, like some of the Pathfinder adventure card game art, some art from various archetypes in Pathfinder 1. Kent's stuff is great. But before Kent, like there were limits to what kind of updates or changes or concept art could be done. But with Kent, the amazing concept art you sometimes see in preview blogs for Paizo is Kent. Kent can make fairly significant adjustments to a piece of art if needed, but he has limited bandwidth. It's a limited resource. You would have to be like, well, this was supposed to be a badger, but it's a possum, and it needs to be a badger. Kent, can you would you be able to change it to a badger? And the answer might be no. You have to change it to a possum. And in my case, it was yes. We can change it to a badger, right? But it's not just it's not a silver bullet solution. It obviously can help. In general, with art, it often most of the art stuff stays freelance unless it's something that needs a lot of back and forth, like a concept art, or is like a late stage change that needs to be highly integrated with the team of with the art layout team and the writing team. Just because of the fact that it's more expensive usually, I think, to have a full-time on-staff artist probably than to get freelance art pieces.
I mean, having someone on, it's good to have someone on staff, because if you need emergency art, if you need art fast, if you need art touched up, like that's what they're used for. But they're often not used for what you think they're used for. It's like they're not used for actually
Ken,
making
for example,
art.
is also an art director. So that way he can do art direction, but when needed, he can do some of these awesome concept art pieces and do adjustments, like you said.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Or an emergency piece. Yeah,
I mean, it's extremely expensive to make these books, and you know, it's actually fascinating to see how this works, because then you look at companies like Free League, because they come out with so many books, but I also know, because they're based in Europe, is that their staff, I'm very curious to know how they work, because so the cost for art is pretty much the same no matter where you are in the world. It's the same cost.
Because also a lot of artists
worldwide,
international. Yes. They could be like, for instance, our dragon book. Birat Solhan drew all the art in the first dragon book. He's in Turkey.
Yep. He's a Turkey.
And Paizo used him too for a lot of borders for the new Harrow deck.
Yeah, a lot. You'll see him. He's in my books, and he cranks, by the way. He's an example of someone, I'll say, I need 20 dragons, and he'll be like, okay, and then it's done like a week later.
Also, he did Eldamon art.
He did all the Eldamon.
He has a very distinctive style.
He did all the Eldamon. He didn't do all the art, but he did all the Eldamon.
Oh, yes. Sorry. That's correct. He did all the Eldamon art of the Eldamon, not all the art that's in the Eldamon book, some of the half-pagers.
Yeah, but he wasn't available. Pictures. Yeah, he wasn't available. And it's also bad to have one person do everything, because then you're stuck with, you know, it's good and it's bad, because you don't want to have one person be then responsible, and then you have to use them for everything. So it was, you know, it was good and bad that he was not available for that art. I wish he did more. It's Facebook giving me a call, as they do every week. Facebook calls me saying, how can we improve your advertising? Which is really just a way of saying, how can you spend more money with us advertising? No, that's really it, because they don't ask me how they can improve it. They're like, here's all these new ways you can spend more money with us, by the way. But anyhow, I was saying is that Free League's fascinating, because overseas, the cost for their full-time people is like half to a third of what they cost here in the United States. Like, they cost way less money. And that becomes a whole other thing, but because they don't have to worry about things like, oh, I don't know, healthcare, and you know, they don't have to worry about unions as much. And there's just a different society over there. But their art costs should probably stay the same. Their printing costs are pretty much the same, because I use the same printers that people like them use. You know, we all use, there's very few printers that print these books, and we all use the same printers, and their pricing is the same, whether it's me or whether it's Free League or Paizo. We all get the same pricing. So there is some reduced costs, but some, And that could be the development. The development, I believe, is significantly reduced because they do use in-house people, so their writing is much less. They also use sneakily a lot less art. If you look at Free League books, they often will do full page art, but then it's very stylized and put through filters, and they get away with a lot of atmospheric art as opposed to very specific, like we do. Me and Paizo, we do very specific art of very specific pieces, like this guy here. Ooh, look at that. Ooh, creepy skeleton with a metal head. What the hell is that thing? Man, look at that. Look at that halfway. Ooh, that's so good. Actually, I just got this today, Mark. I was going to find out who the artist was. Look at this turtle dude. That turtle dude is like...
That turtle is great.
I know, that's such Battlezoo. That's like totally up our alley.
Look at that. Packbreaker by Andrew White.
Yeah. Now, the turtle, I've never worked with that artist. I'm actually going to get in touch with... Oh, no, actually, I think I have worked with this artist. I'm going to get in touch with them because I was like, damn, look at that turtle. That turtle, that's it. It's like an Eldamon turtle. I love that.
That's a fantastic turtle.
It is very good. It is very good. But the point is that I believe this is the same artist. Like, it's funny thing because we all use the same artists, like that half page. I think that's the same. He's done some of our half pagers, by the way. Full page. He's done a couple of ours. We all use the same artists.
There's great art. Like, there's great art in there. The artists are very skilled. And when we talk about how expensive it is a justifiable and justified expense. It makes it tough, and it's especially tough for new people coming in because there's no way you can do that. You have to use some stock art. You have to use other ways to not buy your own art, essentially, because you can't afford it.
Yeah, a lot of companies, what they'll do now is they're using Adobe art, and you'll see it because I see the same art sometimes over and over again. is that you'll see they'll get a subscription with Adobe, and then they'll type in I need a dragon or whatever, and then you get it, and then you put it in. You're allowed to. The big issue that's becoming a problem is that Adobe art, a lot of it's being generated by AI. So even if you don't want to use AI art, it's going to start creeping in there because the way I believe it works with Adobe is that anyone can put their art up there and then sell it, and then they get a percentage of the sales. It's like a flea market for art, So Adobe's just the marketplace. So it's going to be a lot easier for artists to make AI art, put it on Adobe, and sell it there. And that's kind of the weird part, is that there's all these artists that are against AI art, but yet a lot of the art that's AI art is coming from artists because they want to make money. Or worse yet, it's coming from non-artists who are using AI to generate art and then sell in marketplaces like Adobe Art. It's a mess. It's such a messy topic. But God, I mean, that's the downside of going digital. But it's just never gonna end. It's gonna keep going on forever and ever. Do you look forward to your digital overlords, Mark?
Well, you know what? I really enjoy having print products, but I understand what is leading towards the digital overlords as well. So I can see both sides of this particular situation. I wouldn't say I look forward to it, but I do say that I agree with you that is the direction things are moving.
It just also, it's easier to distribute. It's easier to play. I mean, it's also like, I've been online for, I think, 12 years, maybe 13. I've been playing Pathfinder and D&D. But we used to play. I lived in Manhattan. Oh, wow. So it's been, So I moved out in 2000. So back in 2000, from like the 90s into 2000s, I played our weekly D&D game in Manhattan. And we all lived there. My same group now I live in Westchester, New York. One person lives in Manhattan. One person lives in Ohio. One person lives in Pittsburgh. And one person lives in New Jersey. So
I get it.
Yeah.
At least you guys are mostly on the East Coast time zone or close. In my group, we were all together playing at first, but now one person is in Vietnam.
Wow.
One person is in Taiwan. And one person is in Pacific time.
Mm-hmm.
And so, like, it can be tricky. One person is in Mountain time. Linda and I are on East Coast. There's another person who's on East Coast. There's one person who, for a very short time, was also in Europe. And then that was, like, the worst because we were just all around. But fortunately, he was barely there.
The point is that the downside is, okay, it's digital and there's problems with it, and we can go in on all those, but if it wasn't for digital, I wouldn't be playing. It's simple as that. I just wouldn't be playing. And maybe they're like, oh, you can find new people to play with. You know what? I couldn't. I've tried. Trust me. I've tried to find people to play with. It's hard. But you know what? I get to play with my friends. We get to talk. Actually, our D&D sessions, I wonder what are your Pathfinder sessions like? This is our Pathfinder sessions, Mark. We get together at 8. We talk about crap and movies and TV shows and video games until 9:30, and then we play Pathfinder from 9 to 11. That's it.
Okay, so other than ending at 10, my once every other week Monday game, which starts at 8,
okay,
is almost exactly that.
Yeah.
Is almost exactly that. Yeah. It's an 8 to 10. It's short, and you know what? It sometimes maybe ends at 11, but yeah, it's very short sessions with a lot of BSing at the beginning, just like you said.
Yeah.
My Saturday group does not have as much shooting the breeze at the beginning, and the sessions are longer. And recently, we've been doing some Jewel of the Indigo Isles in there. We've got multiple campaigns that are running. So that's a little bit more similar to the way it was before, whereas my Monday every other week group is pretty much exactly your group. So they have very different personas, even though Linda and I are in both of them, but just from the group mix and just the way that the group does things, it's different.
Cool. So does anyone else have any questions? Otherwise, I'm going to wrap it up because 5 o'clock is time for doggies
good
dinner.
To me. I think we got everybody's questions. Thanks for asking, everyone. And Stephen, thanks for answering my questions about some of this business stuff with Embracer Group because I was very curious.
Hopefully you guys learned a little bit. I don't know. It's like, I feel like I'm talking to the void half the time, because it's like...
No, I think people are learning from this, and I can tell the difference between us doing an episode where it's like doing an overlap of our topics with my expertise on gaming and gaming companies and your expertise in business and corporate stuff. Yeah. Where we bring those together, I can tell that people are learning, and I've gotten comments from people that they feel like they understand things more from hearing it.
No, I actually do. I got to find someone else. Well, Professor Dungeon Master was busy, and everyone else I know was busy. I really need to find... I need to just get one of my business friends on who knows nothing about gaming and do the opposite. Almost like when we had Alan on, who was a lawyer, and
when we had Alan on as a lawyer to talk about the OGL, that was one of our most popular episodes because we brought on somebody who was so much of an expert that he had to claim that he wasn't an expert because real experts always do that.
Legally, he's not allowed.
It's really funny.
It's actually legally he's not allowed to say.
No, but you can tell someone's not an expert when they keep claiming to be an expert in it, really? in a lot of things, in many cases. Whereas Alan, we could see how much of an expert he was because he couldn't say he was an expert. It was just similar to like where some people would be like, yeah, I'm an expert on fairy tales and things like that. But we had Hannah on, and I was saying at some point that she was an expert, and she was like, I have to disclaim that while I did do a lot of study on these things in school, but that I'm not technically an expert. And that's how you know that someone is enough into it.
Yeah, my biggest issue is that I've been following finance and since I was a kid because my dad does it and he taught me, and but I'm not trained, and I don't have like an actual MBA, and like I know enough, but I couldn't. It's hard for me to explain because I know just enough to be dangerous, but I'm not a financial banker. But I have a lot of friends who are. Like, I have a lot of friends, a lot of my neighbors, they're in finance or banking. I could definitely get one of them. I could probably get one of them on. This is a bad time because they all work. They actually have day jobs, but I can get one of them on, and they can go through the details to levels that you couldn't actually believe. I'm trying to just dummy it up and make it very, very, very high level, because it's so freaking complex. It just makes your head hurt. You know, it's like what you're saying. It's like, how can you load up debt? It's like, there's books,
I knew that people could do it because I'd heard about it before. I don't think it should be legal.
Yeah. Oh, it's like this one topic that you can talk about for ages. You know, it's like, that's just one topic of thousands of these topics. It's so crazy. But the point is that there are rules in place, and they're just being used and abused in ways that no one expected. And a lot of it has to do with just technology and the way the world works. Like, for example, a lot of our rules in the Americas are a couple of 100 years old. But then if you go to, Great Britain, some of their financial rules are 1,000 years old. And if you think our rules are broken, you ain't seen nothing yet, because they have rules that are so ancient and archaic that they don't even make sense anymore, but they still go by them just because no one went around to change them. So that's another part of it, is that some of these rules, some people don't want to change them. Actually, you know what was just announced today, which was totally irrelevant, but kind of not? Supposedly the FTC said it is illegal. They said it's illegal to have non-compete agreements, which is a pretty gigantic deal, to say the least. Like, that actually is going to change business and how business is done.
I had heard that the vast majority of non-compete agreements that were out there right now were illegal, but that it was illegal for them to make them. They weren't illegal to make. They were unenforceable. They could make them, but they really just scared people who didn't have a law degree, because most cases they weren't legally enforceable, and if they tried to, everyone would laugh them out.
Correct.
And so therefore, I think it's good for the country and for most people if they just can't make the unenforceable agreements, because otherwise that's just sort of like a tax on compliance for people who do not have a law degree. Whereas anyone with a law degree or a good lawyer is immediately told, you're fine, just ignore this. This is fake. They can just intimidate you. So making the actual, what they're allowed to do, be equal to what they can actually enforce, I think is better, because it makes it easier for people to understand.
Yes, but I'll tell one little story, because I've done everything, and here's another one of my little stories.
Okay.
I don't know if I told this story before. So I sold my company, and when I sold my company, I had a 3-year contract to be the president of my company to the company I sold it to. So I had a holding company, a company above me. So my company, Supernova, I get them confused. Supernova Productions was sold to another company. At Supernova, I stayed president of Supernova, and I had a 3-year contract. And then there was a non-compete for the universe, which basically said I couldn't do what I'm doing for anyone else. And I won't get into it, but
I'm sure it was unenforceable.
Right? It gets worse. There was a thing where I was illegally let go. It's incredibly complex, but I illegally was let go. And by the way, everyone quit. The way I was illegally let go, everyone in the company, all my senior management and vice presidents quit. So who knows whatever happened to that company? It's probably still around, but I really wish I really hope I do not want to be there, because it's like, the vice president and the heads of all 5 divisions quit on the same day that I was fired. So good luck running the company. I heard it was a nightmare of biblical proportions. And then I had to sue them, because they said, okay, you're illegally fired and we're not paying you the rest of your contract, and we're enforcing the non-compete. That's what they told me. So I'm like, So you're not paying me, and you're enforcing the non-compete, but I can't get a job. So here's where it gets very interesting, is my lawyer said, if all they did is say, we're not paying you the remainder of your contract. So I had half the contract. I was there for a year. I had a 3-year contract. I was there for a year and a half. So they owed me another year and a half of salary. Whether or not they fired me, it doesn't matter. I still get paid. But if they said, Steve, we are not going to pay you your salary, but you can work as a competitor, I actually probably would lose the lawsuit, because they would say, well, yeah, they didn't pay you, but you can get another job. So what ended up happening is I sued them, and it sucked. It was like the worst. It really sucked. It was like the worst 9 months of my life. So it was 9 months of me waiting and going through all this crap to, get ready for a trial. And it actually went to arbitration. And I'll leave it at this, is that I had one of their C-suite people on tape telling me how they were going to illegally fire me. So here's actually what happened, is that we were meeting and they were saying in all their documents is, Steve did this wrong, he did this, we had cause to fire him, he was doing a terrible job. And then we do this thing where it's like, okay, let's do discovery, where we give each other our material. And I sent them over, like, oh my God, I sent them so many emails. I sent them like boxes of emails, because I had so many emails. And then I sent them a little CD-ROM, which had the recording, which outlined exactly what they were going to do to me. The next thing we find out is the lawyers were fired. And we got a new set of lawyers to talk to. And my lawyer, who is Alan, by the way, was so happy. He goes, that's the greatest honor, is when the client fires their attorneys and gets new ones, because that's how bad they messed up. And suddenly, now they looked bad because they were lying the whole time, and we had it on tape that they were lying. And I had proof they were lying, because I had this recording, which was legal to do in New Jersey. And it settled out of court. I got paid. And if it wasn't for the stupid non-compete, this would have never happened. So it's actually amazing. That was enforceable. So here's the problem. So what happens if I went to another company and the company hired me? This is what happens, is that they said, yes, it might be unenforceable, but then if, say, Apple hires me, my old company can sue Apple saying, you can't hire him, he has a non-compete. And rather than dealing with that, Apple will just say, I don't want to deal with that. I don't want to get sued. He's not worth it. Steve, you're fired. Or they don't hire me at all. That's the problem with non-compete. It has nothing to do with me. It's that no one will hire you while you have the non-compete.
I didn't even know about that other factor.
Yes.
That makes it even worse. So it's even better that they officially banned it, instead of just having this unenforceable thing that still screws you up.
Yeah. Like, I could have tested it, like you said. Like, I could have tested to see, because my lawyer's like, dude, you can't have a non-compete that exists in the universe. He says, you know what that's called? It's called slavery, and it's outlawed. Yeah, I remember he said that to me, because he goes, that's basically what they did to you, because you can't get a job in your industry and they won't pay you. And he goes, but no one would hire me because they don't want to get sued. So they were punishing me. I mean, basically it was a punishment. In the end, they lost arbitration. They ended up paying me, and they ended up going through 2 lawyers. But you know what? It sucked. It was 9 years of a lot of stress. It was a very stressful time. And I wasn't working. I'm sitting at home. It's one of those, it seems like fun at first, because I'm like, I'll watch Star Trek, I'll play video games. After a couple of months of that, you're like, okay, I'm going out of my mind. And I can't work. I'm running out of savings. I just got married. So, what a nightmare. So, good thing they got rid of it. Did I tell you that story, Mark, or is that a new one?
Yes, you did. Maybe not some of those specific details, but I knew about like 85 to 90% of that particular one.
All right, so that is a story.
But I don't think the viewers ever did. I think that's something you told me separately earlier on about like some of these situations.
Yeah. But
And
that's
about how like you knew good lawyers who could help pull through on some pretty big stuff.
there was another thing. They had me sign 2 contracts, and these contracts were like 100 pages. I mean, they were nasty, these contracts. And one was like an employment contract, and I forgot what the other. Oh, it was like a sales contract. But there's the thing: they made mistakes because they're supposed to match, but they didn't match exactly. And when that happens, they always take the better of the two. So if it was better for me, and my lawyer saw that. And the other thing they tried to do, this was when I knew I should not have sold my company to these people, is that when we went to the signing. Now think about this: this is 100-page contracts. My lawyer went through it to make sure they didn't change anything, because we can be going back and forth and negotiating for months, and then we literally sit down to sign the contract, and it's not the same contract, that they sneak something in, and that's exactly what happened. And they're just like, oops, that's from an earlier draft. We didn't mean for that to be in there. Just cross it out, or we'll print out that page again. It is literally like that. That happens. It's unbelievable. This is why you should hire me as president. I've seen shit, man. I have seen. Wait till I'll tell you the story. I think Mark's heard the story that I was working at 4 a.m. in Manhattan when the building caught on fire for a presentation to a Fortune 500 company at 9 a.m. the next day, and we couldn't get out of the building because it was on fire. I got stories, endless stories. All my life is insane. Oh, I figured out if there's ever a book written about my life, I figured out the title, Mark. Don't steal it though. You know,
what is the title of your book, and why isn't it I know just enough to be dangerous?
That's actually not a bad one. You know what it would be? It would be Power Gamer.
Oh, okay. I
think that'd be a good title. Well, it'd be about my time in gaming, not everything else. If that's fair. I know just enough to be dangerous. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's an old quote. I didn't make that up. That's been around.
Yeah, but it's definitely true that you know just enough to be dangerous in a lot of ways.
That's true. That's true.
All right, everybody. So until next time, if you want to battle the zoo, you have to roll for combat. Bye, everyone.
And check out Secret Dragons. It's almost over.